What's going on and welcome to today's video. Today what we're going to be doing is I'm going to show you a couple tricks you could do to your 808s so you can pretty much let your 808s just cut through the mix a lot better in every scenario, like whether it be cars, speakers, headphones, or even like on phone devices like this. Using these tricks, your 808s are just going to knock everywhere. But before we get into it, I just want to remind you guys to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you guys stay up to date with the videos that I'm going to be posting. So I was working on this beat here and it's not finished yet. It's just kind of like the skeleton. I was just kind of getting some ideas down, and I just started off with this guitar sample here, and I add the 808s, and I just thought that I would show you how to mix your 808s. I have a tendency of when I make my beats to mix as I'm making the beat, so I'll just show you guys how to do it. I'm gonna show you the beat. There you have it. That's pretty much the beat so far. What I got down is pretty much an open hat, 808, some hi-hats, a snare, and the guitar loop that I just manipulated. The first thing I want to show you how to do is just pretty much keeping your 808s at 127 velocity. I know a lot of times when you play your 808s, whether it be on the keyboard or on a MIDI keyboard, a lot of times the 808, the velocity is probably hitting about 90. You want to make sure the velocity is hitting 127. Highlight them all and then just put the velocity at 127. I'll show you the differences between like 90 and 127. It's very subtle, but when you have it at 127, the 808 punches a bit harder. So I'm gonna put these about 90. These will be at 127. It's very subtle. It's not that much of a difference, but velocity works best like in hi-hats, snares, kicks, and 808s. So you just want to make sure you have your velocity all the way at 127, and that way that would help the 808s punch through the mix more. Well, the second thing I want to show you to do, you want to remember to cut the low end out of all the other instruments, especially when it like guitars, pianos, snares, hi-hats, open hats. You want to cut out the low end because all that low end is just gonna bunch up and it's gonna clash with the 808s. So I'll show you guys an example. For example, like on these open hats, if I were to leave the low end on it, when I play it, you see all this stuff here? All that stuff would clash with the 808. Well, it is clashing with the 808 if I don't, cut it out. It might be like a very small thing or it's not even a noticeable thing, but when you have like the open hats, some hi-hats, some percussion, some snares, the guitars, some pianos, just a bunch of instruments, it all builds up and it just messes with the 808. So you want to make sure just to cut the low ends. You want to be careful when for example, like for this guitar, if I were to cut to 200, it will thin out the guitar. So I just want to push it back, try just the minimum of 100, like just off the top on every instrument. 100 would be cool for pretty much everything. Now the third thing I want to show you to do is you want to level everything, especially when it comes to mixing. Leveling is one of like the biggest important things you could do. For example, if I have the snare here at its normal volume, like here, if I were to play it, it just sounds out of balance. So that would be pretty much how the beat would be sounding if I didn't level everything. I usually level everything as I'm making the beat. Now, what I personally do is I go within the instrument and I usually just bring down the volume within it without having to use the faders, because I like using the faders for like later on. So you just want to grab it. Like if you have your samples in Drum Machine Designer, you just want to grab the volume and just bring it down. And that will help for the 808s to be more prone, like more in front of the mix, and they'll be hitting harder. You also want to make sure your 808s are in mono. Like I have these 808s here that way, because if it's in stereo, you're going to introduce like widening. Now the fourth thing I want to show you to do to your 808s so your 808s could punch through the mix is you want to cut out the high out of the 808s. And I just use a simple channel EQ and I just cut to about, what is it, 790. If I were to remove this and play the 808s, there's like a little click in it. It's not noticeable, but when you start bringing up loudness, that click will come out. So you just want to cut the high end out of the 808. And it also makes the 808 sound a lot deeper, a lot punchier, even though you didn't do anything. You just want to cut out the highs. I personally like using a 2BQ. If you use Logic, the vintage 2BQ is amazing. What I do, because for this beat, my 808 is going to be the only thing in the low end. If I were to have a kick, I would sidechain compress it and probably keep this at 60 hertz, just because the more of the sub of the 808 will come out. But since this is the gonna be everything in the low end, just want to move this to 100 and probably just boost this. Now you don't want to boost it too much because of the next thing I'm going to show you how to do. So you want to just keep it between 3 dBs and 2 dBs, probably even 1, depending on how loud your 808 is. So I'm gonna bring this up slowly so you guys can hear the difference. Now that's just gonna boost 100 hertz and the stuff around it, so you'll get a lot more punch from the 808s just by boosting that up. Now a cool trick you could do, which would be in the next thing, is use max bass by Waves. I personally like using light and medium, and that's just presets. You just want to play with this max bass here and just bring it in, and this max bass is just going to introduce harmonics within the mid range of the 808, and it's going to make your 808 sound a lot fuller. So adding the EQ, the 2BQ, and some max bass is just going to make your 808s punch a lot without having to do much to it. Now, I personally found the best frequencies to work in is between 70 and 100, but 80 is usually good for most 808s. It all depends on the 808 you're using, to be honest, but 80 works fine. And for this example, it's working good. So I'm just going to bring this up, and I'm not going to push it too much nor too little. So I'm just going to probably keep it around here. So I'm going to play it and then I'm going to bring it up. Now, it's very subtle, but when you do it, it introduces more harmonics. Now, the last thing I want to show you, and this is a cool trick, I love doing this to my 808s as well as to my kicks, and it just makes them so full and just cut through the mix more, and that's just busting some saturation or some distortion. The first thing I'm gonna bust is a preamp. It's by Soundcloud. It's called the little radiator. What I usually do is I just turn it all the way up. Like for the saturation knob, I turned it all the way up. Overdrive, I didn't turn it all the way up, I just kept it like at 19. I just bus it. What you're gonna do is you're gonna create a new bus by here, sending it to bus 11, which is a preamp, and you just want to slowly bring this up, and it's just gonna make your 808 sound a lot nicer. I've been using this little radiator because it's just been sounding so good on everything, like just the color it's giving it. I'm just gonna introduce it slowly so you guys can hear it. As you can tell, it just made it sound so nice. I don't know how to explain it. It just sounds good when you bust some like saturation or some overdrive or some distortion. Now the next thing I'm gonna show you is how it's gonna sound with some saturation. Each one of these is gonna give it a different color. So depending on what you're going for is what plugin you want to use. So for example, the little radiator is just gonna make it sound a lot fuller. If you use some saturation, it's gonna give it more like of a punch, like of a kick feel. So I'll show you guys right now. And this is just the saturation knob by Softtubes. It's a free plugin if you go to their website. So as you could hear it, it gives it more of a kick feel to it. The 808 is still there, but with the saturation, what it's doing is just giving it more of a kick feel. So if that's what you're going for, then you would want to use some saturation. Now the last one I'm going to show you guys is a stock plugin by Logic, and that's Overdrive. Now Overdrive is going to give you more of a saturation feel, so if that's what you're going for, you just want to use Overdrive. There you you have it. That's how the overdrive is going to sound. And it, like I said, it's going to give it more of a saturation feel. Now you could also use distortion on it, but personally for these 808s, distortion doesn't really sound good. I can show you how it sounds, but I personally don't really like using distortion, especially with these 808s. But the distortion is going to give it just a different color. Like I said, it's going to do something different to the 808s. Now you want to be very subtle when you start introducing distortion, because it just boosts up the volume so much. So that's how pretty much the distortion sounds. I don't want to push it too much because it's going to start clipping. But my personal favorite is just using Little Radiator by Sound Toys. That's just pretty much how your 808s will sound. I'm going to play it and I'm going to turn the plugins on. I'm going to play to turn them on so you guys can hear the difference. This is with the plugins on. Now this is with the plugins off. That's with the on. There you have it. That's just how to get your 808s punching, get them cutting through the mix. Play with these, you know, like play with the 2BQ. You can find like some dope stuff to do the 808 with some 2BQ, also some max bass. You know, mess around with the distortion, some overdrive if you just have some stock plugins, or some saturation knob. It's a free plugin. Little Raiders by Sound Toys. So I just want to show you how to make your 808s punch and cut through the mix more. I hope you guys liked the video. I just want to remind you guys to subscribe, hit the notification bell, like and comment. If you have any suggestions, leave them in the comment section below. If you know any cool tricks on what you do to your 808s, leave them in the comment section below. And I hope to see you guys in the next video. Peace.